You're with Destination Newry. I'm Rowan Hand. This is Canon John Kearney. Once upon a time, we would have gone to the Abbey in short trousers and long socks. And we would have been there, Jimmy Haffey, we would have been there with Sean Markham, we would have been there with Brother Doherty, we would have been there with Brother Newell, we would have been there with all of these iconic teaching names of the past, John. How are you?
I am very well, Ronan.
You look contented.
Well, I must say, yes, life is good.
Thanks be to God.
Can't complain.
Thanks be to God.
But I would honestly say, as we look back, that you got the high road, Ronan. I got the low road, and we're still going.
You keep saying that to me, and it's not true remotely. You have a very high place in the firmament there, and the gates of heaven. Do you know the way gates open automatically when you walk past?
Yes,
as soon as John Kearney walks past the gates of heaven, they'll open, and there'll be an automatic arm come out and pull you in. Because I'll have to climb over. That'll be it.
I wonder.
I've written this week in my column, Rowan's Rambles, about my days in the meadow and remembering growing up there and remembering all the things that made childhood beautiful, like the corrugated church that was the first St. Bridget's. You wouldn't remember that, would you?
I certainly do.
You?
I remember the corrugated church, and I remember well, the building of the new church.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think the lasting memory I would have of the building in the new church is the man that lost his life in the building of that church. They arrived out on a cold morning, and a man called Oliver Grant from Mullaban, and he started the crane, and they hit the overhead cables, and he was killed instantly in that incident.
That's amazing, John, that you remember that. Well done.
Oh, I do indeed.
Of course you would.
And then there was the famous Father Buckley, I think it was, who did the fresco on the back wall.
On the back wall of the church. He's a Dominican.
He was indeed.
And Buckley is his name, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And he would go out in the morning on the workers' bus. There was a workers' bus going up.
Stopped at the door of the Dominican.
Yes, and brought him out, and he went out and painted all day and back in again in the evening.
My memory of the corrugated church was winter time, and they had heaters along the walls, and the rafters were exposed, the joists, the trusses were exposed.
Yes.
And we would go in, and it was wet, and there would be wet on the clothes of the Christians gathered. And throughout the course of the Mass, you would feel the drying coming into the air.
Yes.
And you'd get that sense. But it was a lovely intimacy. It was beautiful.
Yes, I think, when you look back and think of architects who provided us with big churches, I wonder. I think there was something there. And it's not really the building either that makes the church, but although it does contribute greatly,
it does.
But I think the people who are there, and these people were the heart and soul of Newry.
Absolutely.
And made a tremendous contribution. But church for them wasn't just the four walls of the building where they went to Mass. Church for them was out in the community. They were open-minded people, hospitality, doors were open. What they had, they shared. And
the Joneses have an awful lot to answer for, if you think about it. Keeping up with them. Over the years, And I was talking to someone the other day. It was in Dublin. I was sitting talking to people in a kitchen somewhere, and we were chatting. And the story emerged of the man who had built his own coffin.
Yes,
it was in the Irish News.
Last week. Yes.
So I made the announcement that I was blessed because I had been given a gift of my own headstone, thanks be to God, by a nice stonemason up in Fermanagh, a fellow called Michael Hoy, who had gone to do a nationwide program with. Sure, didn't he do this beautiful thing for me? And it's up there, awaiting the moment. So I let the folk know. I said, well, I actually am building my own coffin, and I've Raymond McCabe's van hired to take me to the graveyard. And there was a kind of stony, this is about keeping up with the Joneses. Even in death, some people want to keep up with the Joneses. Oh, you couldn't do that. What would people say if you were in a homemade coffin? So that, even it goes beyond life, the business of trying to be as good as the next.
Well, I may not be going in a homemade coffin, I'm not sure, but I certainly am going with a pair of horses.
Yes, they're
Yes.
drawing you.
They're going to bring me.
Well, if I could get a boat to sail in front of me, I'd do that, you know, which is great. Talking of these matters of death, you've had a busy week. Good people have left us.
Yes, Warren Point has been, you know, a very busy week. We began the week with a young man, Christopher Gilly, who came to Warren Point when he was 16. He joined the Election Brothers, and there are some fascinating stories about him. Was a tremendous dancer.
Oh, yeah.
And singer. And they tell the story of one night he was over in a marquee in Carlingford, and the patients in the Election Brothers were in bed, and the sea was calm, and the music was coming over across the lot at such a level that it awakened all the patients. Yeah. And they had to ring the guards in Omeath to go down to Carlingford and say, get that fella off the stage, he's disturbing the whole patients. And then, of course, there was the other incident where he was at a dance in Banbridge with the Miami show band. He was to come home with them. All the show bands knew him. Mickey McGill of Warren Point would have known him and taken him to many dances. And then he met someone later on that night who was going to Warren Point, and he got with them instead. And sure,
blessed lift.
We all know the tragic circumstances. Yeah. Then, of course, we had Jerry Barlow.
Dear Jerry.
Played for the London Irish.
Wow.
Came here in the 80s.
Built a huge business.
Typewrite and, you know, gave employment to many people. Loved life. Was in the same class in Ballymena as Willie John McBride. And Willie John came to his funeral and spoke, and I must say it was a tremendous community tribute. Many of his customers came from Sweden, Italy, Germany, in tribute to, you know, a man
most
that was
as well.
A businessman, but also a great friend.
Hugely unexpected too. You know, but that's the way Jerry would have wanted it. He would go quickly.
I think so. I think so.
No lingering at all. And then Jack O'Hare went this week as well, for goodness sake.
Jack O'Hare, one of the great businessmen of Newry. And not only that, but when you look back, people like Eddie Macklin himself were to the forefront of any attempt at economic development.
That's right.
And also, I think they made a tremendous contribution in the farming community. Money wasn't there in the farming community. People needed meal to rear stock, to make money. People like O'Hare's gave them the money and gave them the feed and said, look, when you sell the cattle, you can pay for it. You know, gorgeous. They were...
That's the stuff of heaven, John.
Yeah. They were great
really
people.
It really is. With so many deaths, right? Everyone wants you. They're clawing for you.
Oh, well,
we don't want anyone else to do that.
But I mean,
there's a huge pressure on you. But you're popular. You're a wonderful fellow. You're an enjoyable companion. You're a great pastor, and people want you. Does it wear you down at all?
Yes, at times you would get very tired. But I suppose I have the advantage that I would meet a lot of people, would be in the hospital at least every week, was there last night, and would sort of know, you know, where people are at on their journey. And, you know, when a moment of crisis comes, they say, well, you know, will you come? And that's the way maybe it works out. But there are many men who do great work too.
That's true, yeah.
Many men.
In a world that would more readily point the finger at priests and say this, that, and the other, you and others like you, and I know hundreds of such, thousands of priests, men of excellence, men of integrity, men who care, and that's all a huge thing indeed. We're heading now towards Lent, and I love the way you use the line there, where they were on the journey. Yes. People where they are on the journey. Because I would be very convinced that we are on this journey. But I'm going to test you with two things, if I may, throw them at you, and don't be embarrassed by them, because they come to me from men who believe, and one was a woman, I think, that you've done amazing things. And it's no bad thing to draw out the amazing things in a world that would hack at your ankles. Yeah. And one of the things, Gerard Larkin, Lofty, Now, he
Gerard
told
Larkin.
me, I'll tell you what he told me. He attributes much of his success in the journey to sobriety to the day you put him in the car and took him to a certain place. And you took him to Sister Concilio.
Sister Concilio.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
You are.
I was in Newry at the time, and there were a whole group of them, and we worked with them, and these are things that happen. You wouldn't be aware of them at the time. They just happen, and these are the things that happen on the road of life. You don't plan them. You don't set up to make them happen. They just happen, and you go with it. And obviously, we would meet on a regular basis, although it's rare going out with Lofty. The whole focus changes. I find when I go out with Lofty, people talk to him and they want to hear his story, but he likes just to keep it quiet. But I mean, if anything, it says to us, look, you can always come back.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, sadly, I know many colleagues of his who have died long, long before their time, but I would always say there was always tremendous goodness in them.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous goodness.
See, it is perhaps the reality that we are much, much, much closer to God than we allow ourselves to believe, that there is a natural predisposition to good, and that the other is an aberration.
Yeah.
We're pulled away from good.
Yes.
I think maybe that's true. The other thing I heard about you was there was a lady and she wasn't too well. She was dying. She may have been in hospital. And the song One Day at a Time made an impression and made a difference. Is that ringing a bell with you? It was remembered she wanted that song played and that you were close by on a number of important occasions as she was dying. These are things that people talk about you and say about you, John Kearney. And you don't even remember them because you do so many of them.
Yeah, you don't remember them all now. I'd have to think.
People do remember.
Hard.
People do remember.
Yeah.
And when you reach out, I remember I'd sustained a hernia when lifting a tree in the bush of Africa that I shouldn't have been lifting. And I got home to Newry and went to the hospital. And this was the time I realized for the first time ever the importance of reaching out to the sick. I hadn't realized this before, because my life was a world of everything was fine. Nobody's going to ever be sick.
Yes.
But I'm coming out of anesthesia, and I open my eyes, and I see this big hairy face of Joe Ralph.
Joe.
And Joe's reaching out to me, the prior of the Dominican.
Yes.
He says, Rowan, how are you? It was as near to heaven as I've been in a very long time. It was as near to seeing the face of Jesus,
Yes.
because of the sentiment being expressed, coming out of anesthesia, and there it was, which was a great thing. But you guys do huge, important, unseen work in the community, and that's what we're talking about now, and I was referring to in those works. And it's an exemplification of the simple command of the God of love. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. That's as much as we need to do, John.
Yes, I really do. I mean, life is about people. I would be I know at times people say to me, Father, do you ever feel lonely? I've
asked you that myself, John Kearney.
I have honestly said no. Because I would meet people young and old and listen to what they're saying. And because that happens, you certainly don't feel that what's happening or what am I going to do or there's nobody here. It's a good life. It does allow you to talk to people. I think the fact of being a minister, a priest, whatever, does allow you to talk to people, and they will talk and listen, and life's good.
It is, and I'm thinking as you speak there, it's a daft question for me to have asked you, are you lonely? Because you live alone. I live alone.
Yes.
I'm divorced.
Yes.
I have family, and they're all out. They're all somewhere else. Doing their own thing. I am no longer a linchpin in their lives. I have cracked the champagne bottle on the bow of my family and sent them off
Yes.
I'm now alone. I'm going to
Yes.
be alone. I don't see
Yes.
any alternative to that. And I'm not lonely because
No.
you do your work, I do my work, and you keep going. The whole thing moves. So as I say, it was a daft question for me to ask you.
Well, no, but there are people who are lonely
I suppose so.
because of the way that life has gone for them, or because of the way of the pattern of their lives. They are lonely, and that's it.
It's an unfulfilled life.
Yes.
Very often that can lead to loneliness, because what you do, like, it's the most joyful thing in the world for you to be getting out of bed in the morning and going to celebrate your Mass, or going out to talk to people who are, it's a strange combination of words, joyful, to go out to talk to the Barlows, for example, or somebody else. But
Yes.
it is joyful,
Well, I
because
mean,
you're
even
lifting people.
even today now, we will go back home. We will say the 10:30 Mass. There will be 150 people there from all ages in the community. Immediately after Mass, it's Pancake Tuesday. We have two chefs coming in, and they will make pancakes for them. And that
In Mass?
No,
No.
immediately after
In
Mass.
the place. Where do you get 150 to Mass on a Tuesday?
They come every morning, and
You have that many?
beginning on Wednesday morning, all through Lent, we will have between 120 and 150 people at 7:30 in the morning.
That's lovely. That's good.
And they will all come, and children will come. They'll probably, some of them might fall asleep.
Surely.
But come the Wednesday of Holy Week, they'll all get an Easter egg. And that's what it's about.
That's what it's about, John.
That's what it's about.
On the day-to-day business of what you're about, how aware are you, in real terms, that you walk with Jesus?
Wouldn't think all that much about it. I go out, meet people, listen to people, enjoy the happy moments, and would be there for the sad moments. But that's the way life is. That's the way that life has developed, and you don't think about it very much. Now and again, people will say, well, Father, I'm glad you came. Now, life can be difficult for people, and you meet them in various places. I mean, I went into a supermarket last night, and I think I must have been there a half an hour. I only wanted one or two things, but I did meet people that I needed to talk to. And I mean, I needed to listen. There was no point in
I know what you're saying.
talking to them and looking over their shoulder. They needed to listen and to be there.
You needed to be there for
hear
them.
their story. And, you know, people going through difficult moments, and
It's a privilege to be able to do that.
well, I suppose it is. I suppose it is. Maybe we don't realise that, but I think it is.
It is. It is indeed.
And you know, when you listen to people's story, you stand back and say, my God, you know, they're great. I mean, for my own life, I have to live my own life, but they have so many other people depending on them, mothers and children, and their worries and concerns are so real to them. And they're worried about many things that possibly, you know, the vast majority of people wouldn't be concerned about, but they are.
No, everyone has the story of his or her own
story.
life, and it's an important story.
Yeah,
And it's the thing that lifts them up, or the thing that cripples them.
Yeah.
And you go, John, when we were at school together in the Abbey, I was looking over the wall to get away and go somewhere else. I was eventually going to go to the Navy and to sea and all the rest of it. At what point in our journey through, or maybe it wasn't in our journey through secondary school, but at what point did you start feeling the scratchings of your priestly vocation?
I would say when I came 17 and a half, when we were in the college, and I finished up in the college because there were no buses, we had to, they used to pray a prayer for vocations, and part of the prayer was that you would call me to be a priest. I wouldn't say that, because that's the one thing I didn't want to do in life. I was out at home in Cullyhanna Ford's Cross Carnival was going strong.
Indeed, it would have been.
And
You would have known Benny Loy out there.
Benny Loy, knew him very well.
Indeed, God rest him.
We danced and we had girlfriends and all. And I think priesthood was the last thing on my mind. And how it came about was the results of the senior came out at that time. And a priest in the college said, "John, would you come in? I want to talk to you." And he said, "Look, we have 4 students going to study for the priesthood. Would you go down, would you go with them for a month or 2 and see how you get on?" And I would have to say, I said, "Well, I'll go down and try it." But I suppose the one thing that kept me there, my late mother, who died shortly after I was ordained.
Thank God she saw you ordained.
Well, she did. She said, "John, I was at Mass today and I prayed for you that you will do what's best in your life. But don't ever think that we would want you to do something that you're not perfectly happy with." You know, and that was a great freedom. I went to college because I wanted to go, not because of what parents wanted me to do. And I mean, she was an honest-to-God woman, but in her wisdom, she was absolutely liberating for me. I was there. Yes, I would say there were young lads with me at that time, 17. I was only 17 and a half, which was very young, who were there because maybe their parents were anxious that they would go. My parents never at any stage said, "We want you to do this." She just said, "I prayed for you that you do what's best." And that to me was a liberating experience. Sure, I do meet the people that I danced with and went about with, and we laugh.
Of course you would.
And we say, "My God, wasn't it? Isn't life funny too?"
But you were still in the going and making up the 5. You were still the tad reluctant going down.
Absolutely.
What was the eureka moment, or did it happen that way?
I don't think it happened that way. When I was 21, I would say I wondered a bit, is this what I want to do? And once I got over, I said, yeah, I think it is. Once I get over this, once I got over that, then I was all right.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't a bolt out of the blue, I want to be a priest. Not at all.
You see, it's in that slow maturation that grows excellence, and that's what you become. You're a damn good priest, if I can mix the words. You know.
I mean, I know I was only 17 and a half, but 17 and a half, when I was 17 and a half, you were asked to take responsibility at home.
You were, of course.
My father would have sent you to Derry with a load of goods, and you had to be there in Derry at 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, you had to be responsible, maybe much more so than maybe 17 and a half-year-olds today.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I was young, and I know that.
Of course.
But I certainly don't regret it. It has been a good life. It has been a hard life.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have changed.
No, of course you wouldn't. And it's not over yet, for goodness sake. But
No.
I see it at times when I go to, when I cross the Niger and go up into the northwest of Nigeria, Father Donal. And I see it in the Sister Paulina.
Yes.
When I see it in Sister Charity, who's there now running the secondary school. These are people who are living the lives of priests and sisters.
Oh, absolutely.
It's also they're living the lives of Crocodile Dundee, for God's sake. It's excitement all the way. You're getting a different sort of excitement in dealing with people. They have the advantage of the African sun on their shoulders. You have the rain of Warren Point and the frost and all the rest of it. But you have the warmth of the people that you're looking after.
The people on Warren Point are tremendous. And I would get away with Blue Border.
I think you would.
They give me... But, you know, we love to see them taking responsibility and taking charge and doing things. And, I mean, look, our project in the church is a clear example.
The bell, the tower.
The bells, the tower. I mean, it's their church. It is where they have come down the centuries. There are people before them. They want to do it. And they did it. And,
Wonderful.
you know, the plan is in the next few
be done.
days now.
Days.
The permission will come from Historic Monument and it's all systems go.
Go. Fantastic.
But again,
John.
that happened because there were great people there who were ready to push and shove and encourage.
I have a question for you, John, that becomes more and more relevant as I move further down the timeline. And more relevant when 2 years ago I was diagnosed with this thing called prostate cancer.
Yeah.
But thanks be to God, I caught it in
Yes.
time. I was one of the lucky people.
Yes.
Well, all I can say is I'm lucky thus far, and that's fair enough. But the question coming down the timeline, as one sees, I've my 70, and people say you're not 70 yet, Ro, and I said I am, because I take my date of birth from the day, as near as I can come to it,
Yes.
of my conception.
Yes.
Because between conception and birth is a time you can be nuked by the sophistication of abortion.
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
important to take a stand on that.
Yes.
And to make it, that's my way of making the point. But I have reached the 70, and I have a great expectation of living a lot longer. But perhaps not. Where, and put me out of the equation now. We're talking about the people of excellence that we were speaking about. Where does excellence go? I said this the other Friday night. I was presenting something, Newry's Greatest, where
Yes, that's right.
the sisters
The
who went to
Russell sisters,
America,
the Russell
they
sisters,
they
yes.
became that. And I asked the question as we were listening and hearing about all of these wonderful people. I said, can anyone tell me where excellence goes when excellence dies? That's the ultimate question for everyone. What happens to us? What's the process? Is it just in spite of all our faith and all our hopes and all our charity of works in life? Is it just a case that we become part of the interstellar mass again? We just become dust again? Or have we a right to have a great expectation?
I do think we have a right to a great expectation. Because, I mean, obviously, we meet people on life's journey who are excellent. They have made a tremendous contribution to the lives of many people. Now, I think their contribution lives on after they have gone. When you see projects and people that they have empowered and enabled to go forward, I think they live on in that way. And I think when they leave this world, I think the contribution that they have made will be in some way acknowledged.
I think I've been selfish here, John. I accept that. But I've been selfish here. Where am I going to go when I die? You know, how do I know there's anything? Have you dark moments of doubt, or are you constantly assured?
To say we are constantly assured, I think, would be foolish. I mean, even in my own work, I would meet people, especially young people who are taken from us. And there are times I walk away and say, what is it all about? There are times we question, we wonder. But then I think deep down we say, well, look, there must be something more to all of this. I mean, I see young mothers who have given their all to their family and are maybe taken away with cancer and things like that, leaving a young family behind them. And I mean, the good that they have done will live on, sure. And I mean, many of these people have suffered a great deal. I mean, just to see it all go up in the ethereal mists, I think doesn't make sense.
No. And the historic reality of Christ is hugely reassuring.
And I mean, St. Paul, and I know Paul was in many ways very controversial, but you know, he, in his great words, he said, I have fought the good fight. I have run the race, I have kept the faith. As for me, there is laid up a crown of glory. Wow. And I think, you know, that's it.
That's pretty good for a 70-year-old to hear.
Yes, yes.
You must be close to the 70 as well.
Oh, no. Surely we're in the same
He's
class.
out of the same pod.
He's out of the same pod, surely.
Yeah, God knows. Well, look, tomorrow is Ash Wednesday. It's the commencement of Lent. What's the Canon Kearney recipe for a good Lent?
Tomorrow morning at 7:30, we will have 500-600 people in the church at 7:30 in the morning. We will bless ashes. We will put ashes on people's forehead with the words, turn away from sin and believe in the gospel. The gospel is a liberating message. Mm-hmm. Look, we are making our life's journey. It is important that we live out the message that Christ gave us. And I mean, yes, I know many people say, well, I'm going off this, I'm going off that. Mm-hmm. Good enough, and there's a value in that. But I think there's no substitute for living out the message that mm-hmm. Christ gave us every day that we get up.
And it's a message of a God of love.
A God of love. And I mean, you know, when you look back at Christ, you know, when he met the woman caught in adultery, he didn't condemn her. We're not in the business of condemning.
No, indeed.
We're not in the business of condemning. We have got to be forgiving and empowering people. Mm. And that's what it's
lovely
about.
Concept, that, John.
Yeah.
Empowering people.
Empowering people.
It's a huge thing.
And there's
huge thing.
People there with tremendous gifts. And I mean, allowing them to use those gifts and, you know, encouraging them, I think is doing them the world of good. Mm. And of course, doing ourselves the world of good as well.
Of course. People say this, you know, I know it's almost like a spiritual chemical that's let loose in your brain.
Yeah.
When you obey the word and when you do the thing and walk the walk, your world changes. Yeah. Completely changes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you no longer sweat the small stuff. Mm. You know, you're soaring, you're in orbit. And you continue to touch and great things happen. Yeah. It's an amazing thing.
Absolutely.
I remember sometimes I can be pulled down a bit because I remember once in a certain place seeing a man, I rather think it was God teaching me a lesson. I'm a great fellow, I'm doing this, that, and the other, blah, 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 subconsciously. But then I'm brought face to face with a man I see at the end of the hall, the end of the room. There's a man who's extraordinarily damaged, facially. Got a huge problem. And I mean huge. And the business of meeting him, coming 1 meter away, and conducting a conversation in which I'm not looking over his shoulder, mm-hmm. and to engage with him and to find out what his problems are. Mm-hmm. At that range. It was a mighty challenge, a might to do it, because what I was looking at was worse than anything I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But it had to be done, and it was done. And then I thought to myself, well, look, Rowan, and this is where it becomes complex. Here you are, you're living in a beautiful penthouse apartment in Warrenpoint. You're living in a lovely place. Mm. Same would apply to you. You would ask the same questions. You're living in a wonderful place. You've a bedroom too many. Your bathroom's twice the size that I need. Mm. Why don't I go the extra mile for this? Why don't I say, look, come on, we'll get enough money to get you looked after properly medically, so that you're not sort of moseying around the derelict houses of Dublin or whatever. We get you. But I couldn't bring myself to go that extra mile. It's too difficult for me. And that immediately robs me of that element of spirituality. That we are deeply, deeply flawed when it comes to going the extra mile.
I think that's very true, and that is the challenge that life presents us with. I mean, I remember very well on a Christmas Eve bringing a young girl who was the worst of drink to a centre for rehabilitation. They were full to the doors. And I went to the lady in charge and I said, look, I have this young girl, could you help her? And I mean, there was no room in the place. And she said, well, on the first Christmas, there was no room for Christ either, so we'll have to make room. And she did. And that girl is flying. Yes, it's a challenge. And if we think we have succeeded in conquering it, I think we're daft. It's a challenge that will come to us every day of our lives. And I think the day we are not challenged, I think that's the day that we have lost it. Every day is a challenge.
John Kearney, I'm very proud to know you. And thank you for coming in.
Thanks indeed, Ron.
Would you end for us with a small prayer out across the world from the heart of Newry this morning as we go live?
Lord Jesus, you have said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Lord, be with us this day, especially those who are alone, who are lonely or in hospital, particularly those who are finding life difficult or challenging and can see no purpose in life. Lord, give them the courage and the hope to carry on.
Amen.
Things you get me to do, Ron.